Well, let's be friends, shall we? Let's be friends. Let's be good friends. Maybe bad before friends, best friends. Sorry. Bad. There you go. Bad friends. Um, this is the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina, named Christina K-O-S-T-I-N-A. This is where I read book and talk books. No special effects going on here. And once a week, we do a Star Trek Next Generation recap. So welcome to the Star Trek Next Generation recap. I wish we could do this live. I wish we could all watch the video together and talk about it together. But unfortunately, we can't do that. And I don't have enough talents to do that. And there are a whole bunch of copyright issues, so we can't do that anyway. But I was just hoping. I've been doing this for a while now. We're on season 5, disc 4. This is episode 213. So I hope you've been sticking with me all the time. I could use a like and subscribe if I'd appreciate it. I know some of you don't feel I've gotten some negative comments that I need to get a life, but I'm just trying here. I enjoy Star Trek Next Generation. I enjoy the character progression. I don't like it in episodes like this where they deliberately, and I know it's going to happen a few more times, they deliberately set Troy up in a relationship, or they set Riker up in a relationship, or they set, and we all know it takes until the movies for the writers to give us what we want. But until that time, they have to torture us with throwing in different love interests for Troy and Riker. This is supposed to be a sci-fi show. Why do we need romance in a sci-fi show? And I can see it as a side issue, but I would rather if it was Riker or Troy having this issue and not dating all these other people. Because they were dating each other before the show started. And they were a couple and they were in love. And the only reason that they decided they couldn't see each other was because they were serving on the same ship. And we hear that argument for the military, that you can't date your superior officer and that kind of stuff. But the fact that they throw this at us forever is just annoying as all hell. But I know it's just little me recapping the episodes. According to my analytics, you've even clicked off by now. You're not even here. I'm just talking to myself. So let's talk to myself some more. Hi! I've lost it. If you could also check in to Flashback Mondays, I'd appreciate it. I work really hard. We do Romantic Times Book Review magazine, and I talk about mystery, romance, inspirational, sci-fi, paranormal, and contemporary romance, and harlequins. And no one else talks about all those. So I talk about all those, give you a whole bunch of different genres to stretch into. Also, later this afternoon, please check out If Then. If you like this author, then maybe you like that author. We started with the Bridgertons way back when. If you like the Julia Quinn's Bridgertons, then you might like Joanna Lindsay's Mallory's, or even better, Stephanie Lawrence Sinsters. I would love to see the Sinster series done. There's more books, there's more characters, and the same characters, even though the series changes after 9 or 10 books, it changes, but the same characters from the previous 9 books show up in future books as the stories continue, especially in the Bastion Club, and we go from the Sinsters to the Bastion Club, the Black Cobra Quartet, that's a huge series, and the Buccaneer series, and we see the same characters go through all, their backup characters. They go from lead characters to supporting characters, but the whole series, you see these people going through all the books, and I would love to see the Sinsters done. And Mary Bailow and her couple, she has 2 different families in there. Please check that video out. We did a homicide one. After I stopped looking for homicide, then I found the ones I was looking for. So there will be a second homicide one in a few weeks, and it'll have more current authors than that one did. We did Ghosts the other day. So we did werewolves the other few weeks ago. So please check all those out. If you like Patricia Briggs, then you might like some of these other ones. So here we are with Star Trek Next Generation, the Masterpiece Society. And I want to ask those of you who are still here. I should have looked it up previously, but I didn't. That's my fault. A few seasons ago, when Wesley Crusher was here, they found the Society of Elderly People, and the elderly people wanted the children to regenerate genetically their society. And that was when Wesley Crusher was here, and he had all the children do stuff. So this is almost the same thing, only apparently these people were a little bit better at it. They brought more people with them. And I'm glad to see there was a little bit, they included a black gentleman. I'm glad to see it wasn't a purely white race. I would have liked to have seen more um, uh, ethnicity variety of people. I'm glad this wasn't a total white supremacy type group. So I'm glad they didn't go that way. But like I said, I would have liked to have seen more genetic variety than the old blonde haired, blue eyed situation. That just waves red flags. But, anyways, let's get back to this episode, The Masterpiece Society. And we start off with a captain's log, stardate 45470. The Enterprise has diverted to Moab sector to track a stellar core fragment of a disintegrated neutron star. Our science teams have been asked to monitor the planetary disruptions it may cause. So Riker informs the captain that we've got a problem. Our core fragment is going to pass by Moab 4 in 6 days. So this episode takes place during a 6 to 7 day period of time because we do a little after. Riker says, "Isn't that exactly what we anticipated?" Riker says, "We didn't anticipate that someone was going to be living there." Data says, "An artificial environment has been constructed on the southern continent, sir." Picard says, "Have you definitely established that there's someone inside it?" She's going off again. Data says, "An artificial environment has been constructed on the southern continent, sir." Picard says, "Have you definitely established that there's someone inside it?" "Yes, Captain. Sensors are reading human life forms." Picard says, "Human?" Now, we've been through this about 3 or 4 sentences. Yes, they're human. Yes, 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 they're human. Yes, yes, I'm tired of it. Dude, we've asked the same question 5 times. I'm tired of it. Yes, yes, humans. Yes. So, Riker says, "Are they responding to our hails, Mr. Worf?" Worf says, "Negative, sir." Picard says, "Any starships ever reported missing in this sector, Mr. Data?" Data says, "No." Riker says, "How the hell did they find themselves on a deserted planet?" LaForge says, "I'm pretty sure they know we're here, Mr. LaForge. Our sensors are picking up deep EM readings. Looks like wave patterns from an obsolete subspace relay." Riker says, "Which would suggest they have the ability to communicate with us." Picard says, "Mr. Worf, open the lower band frequencies most commonly used in the last century." Worf opens channel. Picard says, "This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. It is urgent that you respond." Worf says, "Its defensive shield around the structure is increasing its strength." Riker says, "Not a welcome map." Picard says, "We mean you no harm. We must warn you that your planet is about to experience a massive seismic disruption due to an approaching stellar core fragment. No structure will be able to withstand them." Worf says, "They are responding." Picard says, "On screen." So then Connor appears. I am Aaron Connor. Because as Mr. Connor, we are unaware that there were human colonies in this system. Connor says, I don't want to be rude, Captain, but we don't wish to interact with outsiders. I'm only responding because of your warning. Picard says, the fragment will have serious effects on your planet within 6 days. Connor says, yes, I know, we've been tracking it, but our biosphere has been constructed to withstand quakes of 8.7 on the Richter scale. And Riker goes, Mr. Data? And Data says, the fragment has a density of 100 billion kilograms per cubic meter. As a result, when it passes by Mohab 4, it will cause tectonic shifts well beyond 8.7 on the Richter scale. Picard says, I'm afraid we're going to have to evacuate your people. Connor says, evacuate? That is not possible. There must be an alternative. Picard says, well, we will gladly explore the possibility of it with you, Mr. Connor. Would you like to come aboard? Oh, no. Our environment is sealed. No one can get in or out. Picard says, we are capable of matter-energy transport. Connor's, matter-energy? Picard says, we can take you directly through the structure. Connor says, really? That's quite remarkable. Picard says, may we arrange for your transport? Connor says, no, I must stay here, but under the circumstances, I will permit a small delegation from your ship inside the biosphere, if only to see this matter-energy transportation you speak of. Picard says, very good. Commander Riker and an away team will join you shortly. Picard out. So the one guy, Martin, says, this is a mistake, Aaron. And Connor says, good Lord, Martin, what would you have me do? Martin says, anything that would keep them out of here. Connor says, we have nothing to hide. Martin says, we have a great deal to lose. And they hear the noise of them beaming in. And can you imagine this society? And we've experienced this previously. If someone is born deaf or born blind, they're automatically killed. I don't like that. I do not like that at all. I just don't like the scenario of that. That's totally wrong. That they can manipulate genes like that. It's just totally wrong. It should not be done. Everybody is an individual, and they have a right to their individualness. They have a right to their flaws. They have a right to be who they want to be. They shouldn't be mentally screwed into being who society needs them to be. They need to be who they want to be. I'm just saying. So Riker, Troy, and LaForge beam in, and they start talking to them. I'm glad there's different people represented in their sampling group here. So Troy is talking to Connor. She says, it's lovely. I can understand why you're reluctant to leave, Mr. Connor. Connor says, not just reluctant, Miss Troy. It's imperative that we remain. And the other guy says, it would be suicide to evacuate. It would destroy everything we've worked for 2 centuries to accomplish. Connor says, you see, this is an engineered society. Riker says, engineered? Connor says, genetically engineered. Our ancestors came from Earth to develop a perfect society. They believed that through controlled procreation, they would create people without flaws, and those people would build a paradise. Troy says, all of you been selectively bred, your DNA pattern chosen? Connor says, 8 generations of us. We have immeasurably extended the potential of humanity physically, psychologically. We have evolved beyond. LaForge says, beyond death. Martin says, frankly, yes, no one in this society would be blind, for example. No offense intended. So Jordy's like, beyond me. And Martin says, frankly, yes, no one in this society would be blind, for example. No offense intended. LaForge says, I can see you just fine, sir. Now, once again, way back in season 2, with Dr. Pulaski. She offered Jordy the surgery and he turned her down. Why have they not addressed the situation again if the surgery exists? Why do we have to wait until after the series ends for him to get the surgery? Let's go on. So they're an exclusive society. They're members only society. No one else is allowed in. If they allow someone in, that'll mess up their structure. And if they allow someone in who doesn't fit their genetic structure, blonde haired, blue eyed, or hearing or deaf or something like that, it'll screw up all of their work. But I do believe at some point they will have used up all their genetic issues and get to where that other planet was where they run out of children. I'm just saying. But nobody, you can't be perfect forever. And I don't believe anybody's perfect. Everybody has flaws. Everybody makes mistakes. So we'll see how this goes. But Connor says, thank you, Martin. Perhaps you've also made it clear that there are still a few imperfections we're working on. For the most part, we've achieved a fully integrated existence, not just among ourselves, but with our environment. We don't just live here with a part of our environment, it is a part of us. Every plant life, every microscopic life form is a part of master design. We cannot separate ourselves from it without irreparably altering who and what we are. Martin says, your presence here has already begun to affect the entire balance of our society. Connor says, if we do not survive, the balance of our society won't mean a great deal, will it? Martin leaves in a huff. Connor says, I apologize, but he is performing his function as he is designed to do. The Forge says, what function might that be? He is the interpreter of our founder's intentions for the society. Riker says, a judge? Connor says, yes, more or less. Obviously, he has no diplomatic talents. Troy says, obviously you do. Good Lord. Yes, more or less. Obviously, he has no diplomatic talents. And obviously, you do. Connor says, I've been bred to fill this specific role. We grow up knowing exactly what our society needs from us, what we are expected to do. Riker says, that must take some fun out of it. Connor says, not at all. My entire psychology makeup tells me that I was born to lead. I am exactly what I would choose to be. Think of it another way. Are there still people in your society who have not discovered who they really are or what they were meant to do with their lives? They may be in the wrong job. They may be writing bad poetry, or worse yet, they may be great poets working as laborers, never to be discovered. That does not happen here. It is for us an ideal existence. We will not give it up easily. And Troy says, we will do whatever we can to help you preserve it. Sakana walks in and says, Hannah, I'd like you to meet our guest. Hannah says, oh yes, of course, from the starship. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. Hannah Bates is one of our scientists. If there's any way to shore up our defenses, Hannah will find him. She has remarkable talent with theoretical physics. Hannah says, I've worked with a few schematics based on the gravimetric potentials and deflector energy allocation. Riker says, Geordie, Troy, and I will return to the Enterprise when you've reached a conclusion. You can contact us. Troy says, Commander, if Mr. Connor doesn't mind, I'd like to stay and see more of the colony. Connor says, no, that would be fine. I'd like you to see it. Riker, and they go up. But this is total no. I hate, he's a smooth talker. He's got that monotone voice. He could be a serial killer. This guy would play a really good, oh, I'm there for you, honey, whenever you want me, honey, blah, 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 the knife in the back killer. And you're like, oh, no, I didn't do it. I'm just sitting here watching TV. Yeah, oh, as you can tell, I'm horrible at this. So we have a get to know you convo. You sure my being here is not going to be disruptive? Connor says, disruptive, you mean what Martin was saying, Troy? Well, I certainly wouldn't wish to throw off your entire balance. Connor says, too late. The damage is done. Troy says, seriously? Connor says, sometimes I think that strict interpreters like Martin have forgotten we're still human. We'll adjust, accommodate. Troy says, there must be other unexpected events you have to deal with, an untimely death, an accident. Our geneticists are able to screen out any congenital health risks before conception. Our population is diverse enough to maintain a genetic balance in the event of an accidental death, but very little is unexpected occurs here. I am making this sound incredibly dull. Troy says, not at all. I can tell you the truth, but I'll deny it if you tell Martin. I found today exhilarating. Meeting you, meeting new people with new ideas. Troy said, I feel the same way about being here. I'm something of a student of human nature, and I find this all fascinating. Connor says, a student of human nature? She says, I'm Ship's counselor. He says, I'm afraid you won't find much work here, counselor. I'd book my next vacation at your hotel if you had one. Connor says, well, in that case, I'll have to build one. Oh, good Lord. It's just too much. We don't need it. Um, uh, it doesn't make sense. I mean, she's got betazoids. She's not even completely human. She would mess up their genetic workings. I don't see why. Oh, it's so irritating as all hell. Because I think a population increase of 20 or 30 people would help their society with genetic variables and give them extra stuff and more genes to play with. But of course, if these human beings are not perfect, if they've got flaws in any way, God forbid we encourage, what you call it, bring into our society or envelop into our society flaws. Oh my God, we had a blind person. Oh my God, we had a deaf person. Oh my God, it would disrupt their entire focus of life, and it's just irritating as all hell. I just, you know, it's just, you know, you fill in your sentence however you want to say. It's just good, it's just bad, it's just rotten, it's just frustrating. You put your own word. It's just. So then we're back in the lab with Jordy and Hannah. The biosphere superstructure will never withstand the tectonic shocks. The environment will be compromised. LaForge says, that's how I see it. And we've seen this chick before. I didn't look it up, but she's been on the show before. She's played several different characters on the show before. I guess it's supposed to be good for TV and I guess it's good when they show one person talking, they put the camera in their face. I would like a group shot. I would like to see both people at the same time, but that's not how they do it in TV. It drives me crazy. Um, so Hannah says, your ship, what kind of energy output is it capable of generating? Jordy says, we have a matter-antimatter warp reaction system, the most powerful in the Starfleet. Normally, it kicks plasma up to the terawatt range. Why? Hannah says, well, we either are going to have to move or that fragment is. Jordy says, we can move a small moon or an asteroid, but a stellar core fragment, that's much too massive for our tractor beam. So she pulls up this thing on the screen, and he says, what's that? She says, a wild idea, purely theoretical. Jordy says, a multi-phase tractor beam? When we first spotted the fragment approaching, I came up with the idea, but we can't generate that kind of energy we would need. But you can. So then they're telling Martin and Connor, we need Hannah to come on the ship, Jordy says. Martin says no. Hannah says, with my theories and their equipment, we might be able to alter the fragment's path. It's our only chance to avoid evacuation. Connor says, no one ever came here and no one ever left until today. This is a date to note in our history books. Martin says this is a direct violation of the intentions of our founders. I don't think they intended us to die, Martin. Her absence will create an additional imbalance. For a few hours? For a few hours. Her absence is going to create an imbalance for a few hours. just because she's being exposed to outside influences. She's being exposed to other ideas. She's being exposed to the world and her ideas and her talking to her best friend. Hey, I was up on the starship. Hey, what was that like? Tell me about it. New ideas, giving the people the idea, oh, I could leave here. I could do something. I could pursue this. I could pursue that. I would be exposed to more things, to more people, to more chances. I wouldn't just have a direct path. I wouldn't be stuck in this particular line. I would be able to go in all different directions. Even if I was genetically bred to do on this and only this, but maybe I like this other thing and I would like to try this other thing, but I'm stuck in this society because this is what I've been told that I've been bred to do and taught to do, and I've been taught only to do this one thing. But I would like to do, I dream some days of doing this thing. And with all these people coming here and with being exposed to an outside world, that opens up the door for chances and experiences beyond their little core planet. Ugh. So Jordy says we have a matter-antimatter warp reaction system, the most powerful in Starfleet. Normally it kicks plasma up to the terror. Oh, wait a minute. I lost my place. I don't think they intended us to die, Martin. Martin says her absence will create an additional imbalance. Connor says temporarily. The circumstances require us to be flexible. We have no idea how molecular transport will affect her DNA. Jordy says it won't affect it. We've had centuries of experience. Connor says, you can go, Hannah. And Troy says, may I return later? Connor says, I look forward to it. And they go up to the Enterprise. It's just, oh, good Lord, why did they have to throw that in? So we get a captain's log supplemental. Commander LaForge and Hannah Bates have spent 3 days trying to find a way to adjust the path of the core fragment. If they do not succeed in the next 48 hours, we will need to begin evacuation. Troy is talking to Captain Picard in his ready room. I believe some will choose to risk death rather than leave, Captain. Picard says, you spent a good deal of time on the surface. How do you suggest we change their minds? Troy says, I'm not sure we can. It would mean abandoning their fundamental way of life. Picard says, they've managed to turn a dubious scientific endeavor into a dogma. You don't approve of genetic engineering. Picard said it was a bad idea whose time is long past. Grace says they seem to make it succeed. Picard says they've given away their humanity with this genetic manipulation. Many of the qualities that they breed out, the uncertainty, the self-discovery, the unknown, those are the many of the qualities that make life worth living. At least to me, I wouldn't want to live knowing my future was written, that my boundaries had already been set. Would you? Grace says, I've asked myself that question a lot during the past few days. I don't know. I doubt it. Nevertheless, it's what they believe in, and it won't be easy battle to talk them into leaving. Picard says, this leader of theirs, Connors, he seems to be a reasonable man. Troy says, I find him very reasonable, open to suggestions, thoughtful, quiet, disarming, the perfect administrator. Picard says, I'm sure. Will he leave when he sees there's no other choice? I don't know. I hope so. Picard says, you admire him. She says, yes. Picard says, then help him see to the reality of what may happen to his colony. If he makes the right decision, if he's as good a leader as he's designed to be, then perhaps the others will follow. So then Geordi and Hannah are in engineering. Hannah says, we increase warp power transfer to 80%. Geordi says, it's going to blow the emitters again. Hannah says, we won't be able to reinforce the conduit to hold the power level. It won't work. Yeah, it haven't had any sleep in so long. My eyelids feel like they've had lead weights. And he takes his visor off. And she says, Geordi, and he says, what? She says, have you always been blind? I'm sorry, I'm probably shocked the hell out of you, didn't I? No. He wants to put it back on. She's like, no. Don't worry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you. I've never been embarrassed by this, Hannah. Never. I was born blind. I've always been this way. And she asks to see it, his visor, and she gives it to him. And he says, I guess so. If I had been conceived on your planet, I wouldn't be here right now, would I? And she's like, no, they would have killed him. And I just don't like that. I just don't like a person has a disability, they're disabled, they deserve to live the best life they can. They don't deserve to be killed because they have a disability or a flaw. Um, Hannah says it is the wish of our founders that no one had to suffer a life with disabilities. Jody says, who gave them a right to decide whether or not I should be here, whether or not I might have something to contribute? Hannah says, I don't know what to say. She gives it back to him. Jody says, well, the visor scans the electromagnetic spectrum between 1 hertz and 100,000 terahertz, converts it to a usable frequencies, and then transmits the information to my brain. Hannah says, what about the data conversion rates? How do you avoid sensory overload? Jody says, a bank of preprocessors compresses the data stream impulses you see. That way my visual cortex, and it gets like, wait. Um, we should be able to send a high energy pulse to the tractor system. If it's short enough, it shouldn't overload the emitters. The technology is right here. If we could adapt those pulse compression routines and then apply them to the warp core conduits, we would have to avoid tractor force rebounding, but that shouldn't be hard. Judy says, sure, with a few modifications. Oh, that's perfect. What? If the answer to all of this is a visor created for a blind man who would never have existed in your society, no offense intended. Ah, well, the kid plays piano very well, and I'm pretty sure he's been genetically engineered to play piano. But what would happen if you gave the poor kid a guitar? What would he do then? Or an organ? See, these people are like this. You were born to play the piano and you will only play the piano and do nothing else. But what if you wanted to do something else? What if you wanted to write music? Or what if you wanted to play guitar? Or what if you wanted to play a sport? On this planet, they're like this. No, 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 no. You were engineered for this specific person and this specific purpose only. It's just, and I can't handle classical music. I would just go absolutely bonkers. Even as background music, it's just no. So then there's a little bit of a rumble. So Troy and Connor go and have a private moment, and this is where the issues start. Troy says it's hard to believe such loveliness here, just a few meters away from such desolation. Connor says it's hard to believe we're about to lose it. Troy says this must sound incredibly simplistic, but can't you re-engineer all this on another planet? Connor says a nursery rhyme my mother used to read to me has been running around and around my mind since this all began. A nursery rhyme. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty took a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Oh, good Lord. They made it. They could make it again. Or go to a planet that could support human life better than this planet. A green one. Um, Connor says we are every bit as fragile as an egg and as impossible to reconstruct. We are integrated and refined to such a degree that any fundamental change would lead to chaos. I like I said, they're so like this. They're such a rigidly controlled society that the smallest thing is like no. Well, what if I want chicken for dinner instead of beef, but you've decided that it's going to be beef? Ugh, it's so frustrating. And she falls for him, and they have a romantic issue, and it's just like, no. So, Jordy, Hannah, Riker, and Picard, they're all in the scene. Um, Jordy says, in order to move the core fragment to a safe trajectory, we need our tractor beam to be able to handle high power pulses. Hannah says, we need a much more efficient emitter to do that. Jordy says, 4 times more efficient. Hannah says we couldn't get anywhere near that without overloading the emitter arrays. Jordy says so we added a little visor technology to the process and we were able to boost the effective force and at the same time lower the conduit stress levels. Picard says, what's the increase in efficiency? Geordi says 300%. Riker says, not enough. Hannah says, that's true. We won't be able to move the fragment as far as we like, but Geordi says, if we're able also to fortify the biosphere structurally integrity at the same time, with some of the shield improvements Hannah discovered here, it could work. Geordi says, of course, we have to lend them some of our engineering support. Picard says, advise Mr. Connor, number one, and brief the appropriate officers. Prepare them for transport as soon as Mr. Connor approves. So they got to get approval from Connor to go down and help. So they spent the night together. Deanna's regretting they spent tonight together, and she's going back to the Enterprise. This shouldn't have happened. Troy says she could fall in love with him, but her geneticness and she would have to stay on the planet. She wouldn't be a counselor anymore. She would lose exploration. She would lose all her friends. She would lose everything if she stayed here. So obviously she's not going to stay here because there's too much other. She comes here, she's going to be totally structured into laying around all day or doing a specific chore or something like that. Where on the Enterprise, she's going to different planets, she's having adventures, she's going through all this stuff. She has all her friends, her family, her mother, her planet, her entire life. So obviously staying here is not going to be a good idea. And obviously we knew as fans that this was not going to last. This was just something else to throw in our faces when we want her to be with Riker, and we hate that they keep throwing people in our faces. So she's like, I'm gonna leave, and so they tell Connor that they need to bring a lot of people down to the planet, and they figured out a way to save the planet, but they need the people to come down and fortify the force field, and then they need people working on the ship. So they tell Connor this, and he reluctantly agrees that this is the way to go to save the planet. Okay, so then we have a captain supplemental log. The Enterprise has moved to a parallel course with the core fragment. We must adjust its trajectory a minimum of 1 to 2 degrees to ensure the colony's safety. Okay, I'm not going to go back and forth because they're in engineering, then they're in the bridge, then they're in engineering, then they're in the bridge, and then I'm just not going to go all that. So they engage the tractor beam, they give it a try, it emits 170% over standard. Then Data says increasing the impulse power to tractor beams, the EPS power levels are rising. Geordi says transferring more power to the tractor beam. Hannah says graviton generator is operating normally. Surge pulse now synchronized, emitting at 330% over standard. And Jody says, Bridge, we need more power. And Riker says, reduce life support. And Mr. Data says, I. Hannah says, 390% over standard. And the Forge is like, come on, no change in the fragment course. We've got to increase the pulse. Jody says, Hannah says, the emitter circuits won't be holding for long. Jody says, we won't need them for long. Hannah says, 400% over standard. Jody says, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Hannah says the fragment moved 0.4 degrees off its previous heading, 0.65. It's working. All right. Then Data says we have lost one of the emitter circuits. Worf says life support failure decks 9, 12, and 13. Riker says engage evacuation procedures for those decks. Geordi says we're going to need more power back soon. Geordi says acknowledged. And we're back in engineering. Sorry. Fragment new heading adjustment is at 1.01 degrees. Is that enough? Geordi says no. And then Data says we've lost the second lateral emitter circuit. Worf says losing life support systems on decks 5 through 9. Evacuation procedures initiated. Picard says LaForge, and Geordi's like, hold it. Data says ship-wide life failure in 15 seconds. And it says almost there, Jordy. Course shift is at 1.16 degrees. Then we're back to the bridge. Termination of all life support in 5 seconds. Hannah says 1.8. Picard says, now, Mr. LaForge. Jordy says, yes, sure. Shutting down all tractor emissions, transferring power back to life support. Hannah says 1.2. We've got it. Life support normal on all decks. Picard says, Mr. Data, the fragment course has been altered by 1.21 degrees, sir. Hail the colony, he tells Connor. Picard says, success, Mr. Connor. With the upgrades to your biosphere, the core fragment should no longer be a danger. Connor says, I cannot adequately express my appreciation to your crew. Is Hannah able to hear me? Hannah says, yes. Go ahead, Aaron. Connor says, this is a historic achievement, Hannah. You've done a wonderful thing for our people. Hannah says, thank you. Connor says, we look forward to honoring you appropriately when you return. Thank you again, Captain. Now, we've got a little bit of a problem here. She's experienced a challenge. A challenge. She's succeeded in a challenge. It's given her growth. She's gone outside herself. She sees there's more out there. There's more to scientific. There's more achievements to go after. There's more hills to climb. There's more hurdles than just her little 4 office window, whatever, at the planet. And she's highly intrigued. And now that she sees that there's more out there, she wants to experience what's out there. And this is where trouble comes. She's all happy and pleased to get all the accolations, but then she starts thinking, I gotta go back. I gotta go back to my normal, everyday, no excitement life. But if I come back here, there will be excitement every day or a new challenge every week. If I go back to there, I'm living in that environment where there's no challenges at all. You could see it written all over her face. So the last of the engineers from the Enterprise beam back up to the planet. Riker is telling Connor that should do it. All members of the Enterprise crew are accounted for, Mr. Connor. Connor says they've been invaluable. Commander, thank you. Riker, if there's nothing else, we'll be on our way. Connor says, will you tell Diana Troy for me that I'm sorry I didn't have the opportunity to say goodbye to her personally? Riker says, sure. And then there's a little noise, and Connor says there's a breach in the biosphere, and to get Hannah Bates. So I skipped this part, but they were by the glass wall, and Hannah tells everybody with her equipment that there's been a breach. And God, she's always got to go off. And then Jordy calls her on it. She's over there pretending to work feverishly, trying to find the thing. We're going to have to evacuate the planet after all, but she's spilling all this stuff. Spewing. And Jordy says, why are you doing this? Hannah says, what do you mean? Jordy says, there's no breach. Hannah says, what are you talking about? Look right here. It's right here. I measured the toxic leak. You saw me. Jordy says, Hannah, my visor's positronic scan would have detected the leak. Its molecular pattern enhancer would have picked up even the smallest crack. Hannah said, damn, the thing doesn't miss much, does it? Fine. I'll tell them the truth. Will that make you happy? Why are you doing this? Hannah says, I was born to be one of the best scientific minds of my generation, and in the past 5 days I've encountered technology that I could have barely imagined. And I've got to ask myself, if we're so brilliant, how come we didn't invent any of these things? Well, maybe necessity is really the mother of invention. You never really look for something until you need it. Hannah says, but all my needs have been anticipated and planned for before I was even born. All of us in this colony have been living in the dark ages. It's like we're victims of a 200-year-old joke. Until you came, we could only see to the wall of our biosphere. Suddenly our eyes have been opened to the infinite possibilities. So, where's the prime directive? We're in the observation lounge. And it's Riker and the Doctor and Troy and Geordi and Picard. Asylum, Geordi says she wants to leave the colony. Riker says she may not be the only one. The science teams that went down to the surface fielded a lot of questions from the colonists who were more than curious about what's outside their world. Worf says, why shouldn't we grant them asylum? Troy says, we can't do that. Geordi says, we have to do that. Troy says, do you understand what it would do to the colony? Geordi says, I understand these are human beings, counselor, with free will. If she wants to leave, she has the right to. And Riker says, what happens to the colony if she does, if others join her? Dr. Crusher says, the society is genetically integrated. Suddenly there would be gaps, missing pieces. Troy said it would destroy them. Crusher says, there must be something we can do to help. Picard says, we may have already done too much to help them already, Doctor. Worf says, we saved them from destruction. Picard says, did we? Counselor, I think it's time you took me to meet Mr. Connor. So they go down, or attempt to go down, but first we have to have a confession time. So they get in the turbo lift, and it's time for the confession. Troy says, computer halt. Captain, I have to tell you something, and it isn't easy for me because I've used poor judgment. Actually, I've acted quite unprofessionally. Picard says, Counsel, what is it you say? Take a deep breath. She says, Connor and I have had a relationship. I see. Never should have happened. I knew there was concerned about outside influences, and I should have been more careful. Picard says, what is your status with him now? Troy said, I did not intend to see him again. Picard says, would you prefer not to return to the surface? Troy says, no, I think I should come with you, but I wanted you to know before we went down. Picard says, appreciate that. Computer resume. Okay, now it's confession time. Computer halt, Captain. I have something to tell you, and it isn't easy for me because I've used poor judgment. Actually, I've acted quite unprofessionally. Picard says, Counsel, what is it you say? Take a deep breath. Troy says, Connor and I had an unprofessional relationship. Picard says, I see. She says, I never should have happened. I knew there was concern about outside influences, and I should have been more careful. What is it your status with him now? Troy says, I intended not to see him again. Picard says, would you prefer him not to return to the surface? Troy says, no, I think I should go with you. Picard says, I appreciate that. Computer resume. I wanted so much to help him, to be there for him, but the more I was, Deanna, we all went through this with the best intentions. Troy says, I should have walked away as soon as I saw it was happening. Picard says, you didn't. That's human. We all make mistakes. Genetic manipulation or not, nobody is perfect. So, Martin, you should ignore the welfare of the colony for your own selfishness. Hannah says, the welfare of this colony will be best served by rejoining the human race. Martin says, she has been contaminated by the people on that ship. Aaron says, Mr. Connor, I believe that you and I should talk. Martin says, this is your doing. We never should have answered your hails. Hannah says, if we'd followed that advice, Martin, we'd all be dead by now. So much for the welfare of this colony. Martin says, you're not taking her with you. Hannah says, I'm leaving. I'll tell you something else. There are at least a dozen others who are ready to go with me. Troy says, Hannah, let's allow Aaron and Captain Picard to discuss this. Why don't we go for a walk? Hannah says, there's nothing else for them to talk about. So Troy and Captain Picard talk. I want to. The irony is, he's the one who saw this coming from the moment you arrived. Because I didn't want to hear it, I chose not to listen. Picard said, you made the decision you felt you would save your colony. No, no, no. I wish it were that simple, but I can't forgive myself so easily. You see, Captain, I know what Hannah Bates is feeling. I'm feeling it as well. I found your people intriguing and stimulating as she has. I've been every bit as curious about you as the next man. But I'm not the next man. I'm the leader of these people, and every genetic fiber in my being demands that I protect them. Instead, I betrayed them. I've allowed this to happen. Picard says, we've both allowed this to happen. Then let us find a way to stop it from going any further. Picard says, I wish I could see it that way. Connor says, Picard, I was born to govern this colony, not to dismantle it. If you force them to stay, you'll be suppressing their human rights. Connor says, even if a handful leave, the damage to society will be devastating. What about the rights of those who would stay behind? There are the ones who will inherit the social chaos that will follow for generations. Your arrival created this problem. Your departure solves it. Picard says, that is simplistic. Connor says, refuse them passage. Picard says, I cannot ignore the requests of people, humans, who ask for transport away from here. Connor says, nor can you ignore the fact that thousands will suffer if you take them. As suffering grows, more will demand to leave. We are witnessing the end of this existence. I implore you, Captain, do not do this. Picard says, you would have me make the decision for you. Not, no, I can't do that. I'm willing to talk to these people with you, and I urge them not to make an impulsive choice. But if finally they do choose to leave, the Enterprise will not turn them away. So they come out and say that Captain Picard has decided to grant transportation to those who wish it. Aaron, don't you see we can't be happy here any longer. We're innocent. It will never be that way again. Connor says the experience of the past week will become part of our heritage. We will adjust. In a few generations we will be able to. Hannah says, we're not willing to stay here for a few generations. Connor says, give me 6 months. Just wait 6 months before you leave. Hannah says, what will that accomplish? Picard says, it's true that our presence here has had an unintended influence on your society, but it's done and there's no way to undo it. But feelings are running very high. Perhaps it's not a bad idea that you should take adequate time to weigh carefully the consequences of what you're about to do. We are prepared to return in 6 months. Hannah says, in other words, we are being asked to stay here for 6 months while they pressure us to change our minds. Picard says, in 5 days, you've only seen the most superficial evidence of what life is like outside this biosphere. Hannah says, would you have ever chose to live aboard a starship in a bottle, Captain? You are in command of a ship. You live to explore the unknown. We ask for that same privilege. Connor says, Hannah, this is your home. We are all, in a sense, your family. Don't we deserve an opportunity to open a dialogue on this issue at the very least? I am only asking for 6 months. Hannah says it won't make any difference. You'll only be putting the people of this colony through unnecessary pain and anguish. Martin says, you are the ones who are causing pain and anguish in this colony. You. Hannah, don't you see, Aaron? It's over. It's time for you to lead our people into a new era. You could come with us. When you're ready to come home, you will be welcome. And then we got to have the final lovers goodbye. What will you do now? Attempt to assess the damage, spend the rest of my life on the near impossible task of rebuilding this society without the proper pieces. Aaron, you acted in the best interest of your people. There was no way to avoid what happened. Connor says, I will replay each step of this in my mind, looking for the wrong turn, the mistaken judgment. I can find only one, and as hard as I try, I cannot regret even that one. In fact, I'm quite certain that given the opportunity, I would choose to make that same mistake again. I wonder why, with all the hundreds of genetically compatible women, I would fall in love with you. Joyce says, don't say that. Perhaps it's your imperfections that make you so unique. But I am in love with you, Deanna Troi. I always will be. Bye. So we're in Picard's ready room. The colonists are all on board, sir. How many? Picard says 23. If we ever needed reminding of the importance of the Prime Directive, it is now. The Prime Directive doesn't apply. They're human. Picard, doesn't it? Our very presence may have damaged, even destroyed their way of life. Whether or not we agree with the way of life or whether they're human or not, it's irrelevant, number one. We are responsible. We had to respond to the threat from the core fragment, didn't we? Of course we did. But in the end, we may have proved that just as dangerous to the colony as the core fragment could ever have been. Well, that was the end of the Masterpiece Society. I hope you will join me next week. For the conundrum, the week after for power play, the week after 216 ethics. So please hit the like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out Flashback Mondays. Don't forget to check out the If Then episode later this afternoon. And please hit the like and subscribe. Most appreciative. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this little recap. I do the best I can. I wish I could, run it live, but I can't. There are issues. Have a good one.